Okay. Um, well, welcome everyone. It is October's monthly member gathering with the Care Farming Network. And we're just coming off of our beginning care farming series that we hosted in September, the 4 sessions there, which have all been recorded and are available on our website. So if you didn't get to see all of those and you're interested, you can find them links to the recordings as well as all of the resource pages that we put together. So we're kind of cheating this month because I'm taking a lot of the resources that we shared from each of those sessions. I consolidated them into a presentation for today. It's going to be a really short presentation because if you are at those sessions, you don't want to have to just sit through the same thing. But I also did kind of consolidate all of the resources too, and I'm going to be sharing those out after. So it's just going to be about 15 minutes of me kind of doing a high level sharing of what those resources are. And the sessions were broken out into where to start if you're an aspiring care farmer, what to be thinking about finding and accessing land if you don't already have land available, a bit about structuring your business model, legal issues to consider, and then also fundraising, because a lot of people are very interested in the fundraising component. So as I said, some of these slides might look familiar if you were at that. And after the presentation, then we're just going to open up and we're going to share amongst ourselves what resources we might have available to us that others don't know, because the entire point of a monthly member gathering is to just build connections and let each ask questions of each other and share what we know. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And I tried to put these sort of into some kind of logical order. They're going to be pretty high level. But I think we're just going to start with talking about, if you are at the very beginning stages of kind of what we call aspiring care farmers, kind of linking into networks. And so here you can see that there's lots of places to help support you. You've got your local ag offices like NRCS, extension services, all sorts of regional sustainable ag organizations. There's a statewide nonprofit association. So if you are looking at being a nonprofit, they can help you out, and each state has their own. Tons of beginning farmer training workshops, small business development centers. There's something called CRAFT. Again, all of these are going to be linked in the resource page, but just showing that there are oodles of different networks available for you, even if you're not aspiring and you're an established care farmer. You might find some of these folks helpful. I like to use this example. I'm located in Minnesota. When we bought our farm, I used a lot of these different organizations for our getting support. So we have, for instance, down payment assistance. If we want to buy a farm, our Minnesota Department of Agriculture provides matches for farm down payment. Got lots of technical assistance providers. We've got folks that will come out to farms for free and help walk you through things like figuring out where your livestock might be, or where what might grow best in your soils. Obviously, we have extension services. We've got emerging farmers programs. Just, I don't know if every state is like Minnesota, because we do have a wealth of resources here. But I do just want to use this as an example to encourage you to look at your own state, what might be available to you. So as you can see here, John sharing that his advice is just to engage with other farmers. We serve as a network to help connect aspiring care farmers with established care farmers. We also, there's so many people in this network that are willing and able to take the time out of their day to pick up the phone or invite you to their place so that you can ask your questions and gain knowledge from people who have been in your shoes if you're aspiring, to share kind of what they feel were some of the challenges, as well as point you in the right direction. So visiting other care farms if you can, or just other farms, highly recommended. Care Farming Network, we've been around for a few years now, and we offer all sorts of things. Obviously, on our website, you can find a list of all of the care farms in our network. We have, I think, about 250 folks listed right now. We host things like the monthly member gatherings. We have organizational resources and grant funding opportunities listed. Obviously, we can connect you with other farmers, like I mentioned. We do site visits and farm tours. I just sent out an email of a farm tour that is going to be coming up at Oasis TLC for those in the Northeast region. We host a Facebook discussion group. We also offer consultations, and there's 2 folks in the Care Farming Network who have, combined experience of 35 years in care farming, and consultations provide you with the opportunity to ask very specific questions around your farm. So you can find out more about that on our website too. Let's see, other resources. Gosh, Farm Commons. They are fantastic. They provide legal workshops to farmers and ranchers. They have a podcast available. I just found out about these guys not too long ago. There's going to be a link in the resource page, but really great to talk through about any kind of the legal questions, insurance questions, structuring your farm. Highly recommended. There's also Farmers Legal Action Group. And there is the National Council of Nonprofits. I mentioned before, each state has their own nonprofit organization or council. The National Council of Nonprofits is where you can go if you need to find your own state council. So there's also like questions around what you might not know. So this is just a reminder that there's service providers, again, like Farm Commons, that can help you sort through issues as they arise and be prepared for potentially sticky situations. Like a couple of these questions here, they actually have free webinars. And I think their membership is $99 a year. A whole host of webinars very specifically focused on questions such as these. So moving into, again, more, if you don't have access to land and you're looking, tons of resources available to search for available farmland listed over here. You can also reach out to regional or statewide organizations that might have search services, farm links, land links, often kind of provide matchmaking services, if you will, between people looking for farmland to either rent or lease, or farmers who are transitioning their farm and looking for the next owner or leasee. And then here's just a couple of examples of LandLink, county and statewide farm sites. And a lot of these sites will allow land seekers and landowners to post their land available for sale or lease. And again, to make the connections between people. I could probably do a 3-hour presentation on the USDA, but they do have beginning farmer and rancher coordinators who are team members who are available usually through your FSA office. The FSA is kind of the branch of the USDA. They are located in each county in America. So you would want to get with your local FSA representative, and they do all sorts of farm ownership loans. They do some grants, they do operating loans, microloans. So a lot of stuff to kind of sort through, I would say, with the USDA. Is certainly a great resource. And then there's also tools like this from Land for Good. If you're kind of looking for guidance on some of the questions to be thinking about, for instance, renting versus purchasing land. We get a lot of questions from aspiring farmers, not necessarily knowing which way to go. Land for Good has this assessment guide, which can walk you through these different lessons, just to get you thinking, asking kind of probing questions, getting you a little bit more grounded in the process of figuring out what the right solution is for you. This is just sort of a jump into more of the fundraising resources that we have, and transitioning to kind of talking about fundraising and messaging. Our fourth session on the Beginning Care Farming series was around how do I fund a care farm? And we started by talking about storytelling, because the power of a great story is it can be used as your core fundraising technique. And we found that a lot of people are really afraid to tell their stories, or they don't know how to tell their stories. And your story's objective is really just to evoke powerful feelings and empathy. So getting someone to feel through what you're telling them when you're asking for dollars or in-kind donations is a really important part of that story, because it might make the difference between them waving you away or being there to help. And somebody else had said that they wanted to do a session. They wanted us to host a session called Starting with Fear, because it is very scary to be able to feel comfortable in kind of giving your pitch, but there's a lot of help available. This is just one example of a podcast that helps you tell your story to inspire donations. And what we're telling people is you don't need to be a professional writer to develop your story. This is a free resource available to you on the internet. There's going to be more on our resource page, but particularly when it comes to telling your origin story. So if you're an established care farmer, whether you're discovering how to tell your story for the first time, or maybe you just want to fine tune or refresh your approach, we just really encourage you to see the powerful narrative in storytelling as a part of successful fundraising. And it's also important to remember that people might need to understand more about what care farming is. For all of us here on the call, I think we're pretty knowledgeable and have a good understanding of it, but care farming is a new concept in America to many people. So we encourage you to remember to clearly define what your farm's purpose is, to be able to talk about the benefits that your farm provides, and consider providing all of the information above and on this slide. We have a great video on our website. It's also, you can find it on YouTube. It's a short video, just a little under 4 minutes, that talks through what care farming is. If you want to use that to help introduce the concept in any of your marketing materials. So yeah, just remember to be able to, clearly define not only your own farm's mission, but also the mission of care farming to people. And continuing on with fundraising, there are crowdfunding models like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and others. Crowdfunding is just the use of taking small amounts of capital from a large number of individuals to finance your venture. So it uses this easy accessibility of big networks of people, usually through social media, to bring donors together. We've heard from some care farms that they've had a lot of success with this model. And here's just a couple other examples of funding options. Kiva Labs offers microloans, which are available to farmers all over the world, actually, not just in the US, to expand and fund specific projects. They're interest-free loans, and they come back and are available as direct loans through PayPal if you wanted to use that platform. We've got the National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition. They have a great listing of regional grant opportunities on their website. You can also sign up for their newsletter alerts. It's where I often find new grant opportunities available. Same with beginningfarmers.org. They list local and regional project grants that are available and are regularly updating those. Then we've got the USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. They will offer grants typically run between $500 and $15,000 for various projects. Again, these are regional, so you'd want to find out what region you are in with SARE. Then we've got the Center for Rural Affairs, which is a really great resource. They offer links and advice for applying to beginning farmer funding programs. And they also have a farm finance page, which I highly recommend. They have a ton of useful tips for planning your financing strategy. And then we've got the Carrot Project. They operate a loan program, and they're available mostly in the Northeast. Their region and states that they offer funding to: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Maine. And they do some low interest capital or operating loans, think anywhere between $5,000 and $250,000. And if you're a nonprofit organization, obviously the opportunities to receive grant funding and tax deductible donations is probably the reason why you're a nonprofit. On our website, again, we have a list of resources that will link to organizations that do provide grant opportunities. In the past, we've also covered fundraising, social media tips and tricks in past monthly member gatherings. All of these have been recorded and are available to view on our website. And then there are just a lot of local options. They're not always available or on our radar at CFN. So, for example, there were a couple care farms that were recipients of Kubota's Hometown Proud Challenge. Here in Minnesota, again, we have the Lakelands Organic Field Fund, a relatively non-competitive grant for organic farmers that provides up to $8,000 a year. There's many listservs available, again, that can kind of notify you when a local grant opportunity is coming. Here in Minnesota, Extension has that listserv, so just a recommendation to do some research on your end and see what might be available to you. And then just the tools that are needed to do fundraising. Some farms have what's called a CRM. This is your donor database that allows you to track who is giving you money. It helps keep your contacts up to date. Network for Good is just one example. There's many others. There are some inexpensive website builders, Squarespace, I would say WordPress too, where you can, without too much trouble, get a really nice professional looking website. There's a grant database called Instrumental. Well, there is a cost to that. That would allow you to search for grants available. On the marketing end of things, if you're not familiar with Canva, I would very much encourage you to check it out. I am not a graphic designer, and Canva is really helpful because it has allowed me to go in and create really professional looking designs without needing to understand Adobe Photoshop and all of that other stuff. And it's also free to nonprofits. So just a couple examples there. And as I'm finishing up here on the presentation, I did just want to note that, one of the goals of the Care Farming Network is to bring awareness not only to what care farming is, but to also help provide empirical evidence as to why it is effective. Research and data can go a long way. to helping bolster your funding requests. When you have data to stand behind, donors are often more likely to grasp how their gift matters. So on our website, we are listing studies and research that we are aware of, and we'll continue to build this out. Really interesting data that continues to be developed daily. Lots of studies done outside of the US, and thankfully we're seeing more and more researchers and universities really interested in this concept of care farming. So if data is your thing and you like looking at studies and research, great articles and whatnot to cite for things like grant proposals or your own fundraising strategies. So that was a very quick, very high level view of what some of the resources are available. But I'm going to stop my screen sharing here and just note that we're here to talk amongst ourselves, to ask questions, to build community, to share practices. So our group isn't huge today. Maybe if you're more comfortable and if you have a question and want to use chat, most certainly you can do that. Otherwise, feel free to unmute yourself if you have something to share or a question about something I might have presented. Gracie, it looks like you might be asking a question. And she's working on unmuting herself.
Got it. all these are fantastic suggestions, and each one of them takes a certain level of research time, you know. So I'm wondering if they're about resources for especially, relatively inexpensive or even free resources for talking to someone who would do like 10 of those things and give a report or proceed to the next stage. I mean, given that we have to give them our story and so forth to work with, that I feel very competent about. And do that when I've already started making presentations to different organizations and so on. But I feel kind of overwhelmed about the looking for grants and so on, even though we're already involved with the NRCS in a land clearing thing, which we've gotten a grant for, but like there are obviously other things that I don't even know about that are, government funding things that, you've mentioned several, and I know there are sort of state specific. And anyway, that's just an example. And then other local organizations which feature funding for disabled people, etc. Is there a source of somebody who would take a bunch of stuff and just do it and give a report?
When you say give a report, are you saying kind of give a report back to you for suggestions on where you might go for funding?
Right, where we might concentrate, not necessarily following totally through, but doing the initial of who are the 5 out of these 20, who are the 5 that might be the best for us in particular to pursue?
So if anybody has experience with having had to work, and Gracie, you're kind of newer to care farming, and they're in Texas, yes, your organization. One thing that we covered in session 4 of the Beginning Care Farming series was before you actually jump into the where do I go for funding, we talked a lot about understanding and creating essentially sort of a business or marketing plan. So first you have to know where you're starting with what it is you need to ask for. Like, what are the dollar amounts? What programs am I going to be offering? Grant funds can vary anywhere between $500 and upwards to $250,000. So it's hard for me to answer that question because without knowing sort of where it is and what it is you need. So if you're looking for grant funds, for instance, or loan funds to purchase land versus $10,000 to kickstart, buy a piece of equipment, you would be looking in different places for grant funders there.
I'm looking for capital funding for buildings. We have land, we own land. And we have a basic business plan. I realize it might have to be fine-tuned and so on in relationship to a particular investor or grant giver. But now I still feel like that there's, like 20 things that I need to research or look up. And
yeah,
Kate,
it can feel really daunting.
Yeah, it feels very daunting at the moment. And maybe I just keep one at a time like everything else.
Well, the
Oh,
other
thank
thing
God.
and that's, you do have to start somewhere. The other thing I was going to mention, again, pointing back to the session 4 around funding, was there's sort of this idea of creating a base grant where, and there's actually going to be a link to a resource that allows you to do that, where you can kind of fill in all of the information that most grants will ask. And you have that as your foundation so that if you do have to apply for multiple grants, you don't have to recreate it every single time. So you might want to think about just asking for support from somebody who would be willing to help you with your kind of foundational grant. And then what I've done for an organization is you just, do your research and you find 5 grants. And you say, this year we're gonna go for those 5, and you track them and you use that base grant. And if you hear back from them that you weren't awarded dollars, usually there's an opportunity to also have a conversation with maybe a grant officer and ask them, what was it about my grant submission that wasn't compelling to you? And then take that feedback and work it and redevelop either your message or your budget and go back at it again. As grants they're not for the faint of heart.
That's for sure.
But having somebody who's supporting you and has some expertise or knowledge in fundraising, whether that's a person that would be on your board or a intern, where really all it is they're doing is just kind of owning that piece of fundraising and grant writing, might be really helpful too.
Yeah, that is what I'm looking for. And Kate is very supportive, etc., but she doesn't have maybe less experience than I do with getting grants for nonprofits. And nobody on our board has ever really done that either. So, I'm looking for some other kind of not other kind of person, but somebody. And I think it needs to be somebody local, Central Texas, so that they know the grants that are specific to foundations in this area. Anyway, okay, just help me pray then that this person will come.
Well, one other thing that I should mention, I don't know how much budget you have, but there are people out there who are, independent grant writers that you can call on. They do research, writing. If you had some dollars, that you might actually be able to employ someone, even very part-time, on a project. That could be good. Brianna mentions here that, University of Texas, Austin has a grant database.
Yeah, I should contact them. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Nancy has a question here. How do you determine when you move someone from volunteer or intern to a paid employee? And is that an issue anyone runs into? And I see Andrea has joined us, and I'm gonna pass that to her.
Okay. All right, wait, let me make sure I understand the question. How do you determine if someone moves from volunteer to paid? Is that the question?
I believe so. Nancy?
Nancy, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Essentially, so like I run a program, and ideally when individuals have mastered X, Y, and Z tasks, they either move on to paid employment on the farm, or I help to get them employment somewhere else because they've, learned everything they need to know and should be getting paid somewhere to do it. But being a nonprofit, we don't have money to always to hire people from my program. So I just don't know what the balance is, and when you cut someone off from volunteering and say like, hey, you because there's different state laws, and I'm not articulating what I'm really trying to say. There's different laws in regards to volunteers versus interns versus work experience versus, basically none of the volunteers can be replacing a paid employee. But if they're doing all the work that paid employees do with paid employees, where do you go with that? Like,
I'm gonna, I see there's a couple people on here that have experience possibly with this, and actually some people that are new to the group, that might be also interested in answering. Melanie, do you have any advice to that?
I do. So I definitely have had similar struggles. I'm a programming director at a nonprofit farm, and we run all of our programs we run through partnerships with schools, with students who are in like school to work programs who have disabilities. And we also work with a number of like job coaching agencies in the area for adults with disabilities who are seeking employment. And those programs all start out as volunteer, with the exception of some programs that like the schools have a grant secured that they can pay the participants. And we have hired a number of people from our programs. And, I would love to see that number keep increasing, but, we're a nonprofit as well. We're an integrated employer. And I guess my advice, something that I ran into recently, because of course many of our clients are DDD clients, but also DVRS, which I'm not sure about other states, but DVRS will only fund places for job coaching that are competitive integrated employers. And something we ran into recently was DVRS actually is doing a bit of like an investigation because they were concerned that we hired someone simply to hire them and simply to give them a job. And of course, as the programming director here, it's like, of course you want to give people opportunities. But what I realized through that experience is that if you want to be compliant with those regulations and you want to be a competitive integrated employer, you have to be hiring someone because you have a business need. And of course, we have limited staffing. So, our programs all start out volunteer. We hire people when we can, but what I've kind of learned is that you need to be hiring people because you need to hire someone. And DVRS even wants to see that we're publicly posting all of our job openings and we're, seeking out applicants and hiring the best option, whether that's someone with a disability or not. But there are certainly businesses that I'm aware of in New Jersey and elsewhere that don't follow those regulations. They exist to hire people with disabilities, but that disqualifies them from working with DVRS. So it's kind of a decision that like you have to make for yourself, I guess. But it is tricky when people want a job and you're not able to hire them at your nonprofit, and figuring out how to help them find jobs in the area. So the ARC, I know in New Jersey, has inclusive job fairs, and I'm actually going to be going to another inclusive resource fair in a few weeks in southern New Jersey. So those would be my suggestions, I guess. Also, of course, like I said, we partner with job coaching agencies, and ultimately, I'm not sure what type of nonprofit you have, but it's, the job coaches exist to try and help their clients find jobs. But, of course, it's limited. So I live near Atlantic City, and I know the last job fair I went to was pretty much all of the casinos, and they were pretty much only seeking people for like maintenance work, like janitorial work. So it's unfortunately definitely limited. And you know, we've been able to hire a few people here, but even that we're limited in. So it's tough, but yeah, those would be my suggestions, I guess.
Yeah, I think that this is an issue that is uh a lot of people are experiencing. And I'm calling in from my phone, so I'm having trouble like typing in the chat, but you might want to look up the organization Together for Choice, which is a coalition of agencies that are kind of advocating for kind of a different role that Melanie was talking about, but I think it is kind of state specific. Yeah.
Could I add something to that that might be helpful? I mean, Melanie kind of nailed it, and we do a lot of similar work. On our farm, we specifically work with people with substance use and mental health, but another part of our agency does the IDD work. I think it emphasizes the need when you have a role, whether it's a volunteer, an intern, or employee, that those roles are clearly defined and documented, and the scope of those roles are clearly defined and documented. So if it's an intern, there should be some kind of hourly commitment, total hours that they're going to contribute as part of their internship and supervision. If it's a volunteer, it's clearly stated in that role. And then as an employee, obviously, it's a legal requirement to have those. And there should be some distinction. There should be a little bit of differentiation between each of those roles. Certainly, you know, more expectation should be placed on a paid employee, which keeps you out of trouble a little bit with, you know, DOR and IRS, that the volunteer is not doing the same exact thing as the employee. Sometimes they want to see a little bit of a distinction there, but really define it from the beginning. Don't start people in an ambiguous relationship. Make sure they know during the onboarding process. If you have volunteers, make sure you have volunteer insurance, because they're typically not covered by your workers' comp insurance, things like that. And you probably already know these things, but these are things I've stubbed my toe on over the last 5 years of developing our farm program too.
Gracie, I just want to make sure that you saw in the chat too, that Deborah put in some information about them using an independent grant writer. Okay, excellent.
I want to put Patrick, I wonder if we could put you on the spot. I know that you're new to the group and we've had some email interactions. I'd love to just hear a little brief introduction, because some of the people here on this call have, you know, been here a couple times, and if you just wanted to say a couple sentences.
Yeah, I'm not one to shy away. Thanks for the invitation. And first off, thank you, Kate and Andrea, for I think what we lack in our technical assistance has been supportive in the organizational pieces. That's the one thing over the last 25 years of working as kind of the lead at the farm, from program manager, farm manager, director to a lot of those gaps. Ellie, one of our new intern Jesuit volunteer on AmeriCorps members, is on the call. Two of our other team members that we just hired are with our tech support, getting their laptops set up. So we're definitely where we lack in organization. We are abundant in love. So we are an intentional community supporting individuals with and without intellectual disabilities. And so our program just recently split into two pieces, where we have the farm entity that is running the day-to-day, and then we have an I&I team, which is integration inclusion team, that does more of the technical one-to-one support, job support for our folks with intellectual disabilities, which are our growers and farmers. One thing that we did to get around some of those rules is we hired everyone, and we're just figuring out how to pay them. We saw that after 18 years of, you know, some very good job development, but there was probably more social development than the job stuff. We refocused on getting job skills, and in that process, everyone should get paid. So we actually pay competitive wage to our farmers, which everyone said that would be impossible to do. And the gift of the pandemic, it made everyone take a break, and we just changed the program, invited everyone back. And so it is tough. And we are constantly looking for grants to help offset that. And also honing our programs, getting rid of some of the fluff. We have 9,000 square foot greenhouse space that we do floriculture and perennials, annuals. So that helps offset some of the seasonal stuff. We also do value added with wreaths and evergreen bouquets. We used to have a craft program that it's hard when the people with those skills leave and the person without those skills is there, and that is not my skill. So we've kind of moved more into that. We have honey, things like that, and tubers. We do dahlia tubers, which has been good until last year where everything rotted. But yeah, no, I appreciate everyone for doing what they do. I think I invited my team because I've kind of been around this group for many years, since the beginning, during some Master Gardener classes 28 years ago, and Hort Therapy and Red Wigglers kind of like pioneering of what it is to really be truly a care farm, and how, you know, Hort Therapy farm or just special needs farm has turned into this term that really encompasses everyone. And I have a few friends that work on some veterans farms and substance abuse farms, and it's really just been a joy that to really begin to see an alternative model to accept all people for their abilities. You know, we all have challenges, we all have our gifts, and it's to match that up, like we all know. So yeah, which L'Arche are you with? Oh, I'm with L'Arche in Tacoma, in Washington State. There are very few community. My team's joining us now. So this is Abby, our people coordinator, and then this is Nico, our plant specialist, all new people. So not every L'Arche community has a farm, but we all have really the desire to build mutually transforming relationships. I mean, that's our elevator speech. You know, I think that what Kate was saying and Andrea was kind of alerting to is that sharing that story, finding that piece that, like, when someone mentions your organization and that piece in your heart that kind of goes, oh, and you may not know how to share it, that's that piece that you want to learn to share, because that's that piece that draws people in. And I mean, I love grant writers and all that. It's really about people raising. It's that friend raising. The more people that are engaged and have had a shared experience, it's like our CSA members. It's not about how much money we make from the CSA. It's about how many times we engage fully with our CSA members. So they go, I don't care where you get your vegetables. This is the funnest place. We got extra bouquets. You know, yeah, all my eggs got dropped, but we had a fun time picking them up and everyone helped. And it's those little stories that it's not, you know, the value added is that person piece that we forget about, that the value of those connections in that relationship, especially after the pandemic, where we're, you know, even myself, a very extreme on the 10 side extrovert, like, how do I speak to people again? It's been so long. We closed, it was just two of us on the farm for nearly a year. I mean, we had deer back and it was great, but the people part, and there's a little video, you can YouTube it or Vimeo or whatever. And that was the thing that got me when our, we had a person that did the Instagram thing. Sorry, I'm in the between. I know some, but not enough. And he was like, well, what about the people? And that you can see my pause. And that's, I love the farming. And I was like, I immediately like looked on the website and was like, how do I become an essential worker? There's no way I'm going to stop working. I love being in the earth. But it was the, you know, what I realized, my grower and I, we were hanging out there. We were just like, cool, lunch with us again. This is fun. And what are we missing? And this gentleman came and asked, like, what are you missing? And it was the people. And, you know, it's those personal engagements, those shared stories. So that's that piece that will, you know, you can get the person that will give you $50,000, which is awesome. Or we highlight a gentleman that every week for the last 28 years, it's $5 a week. And just kind of under the radar. And it wasn't until we were kind of tracking this name and everyone's like, who's this guy? And I go, oh, he comes to the farmer's market. He always buys plants. But they're like, well, do you know he donates $5 a week? And what it was is he was teaching his kids. And so it was his kids' allowance. They would work and then they would do that. So we had this kind of big benefit dinner. And we have all these big benefactors and, you know, people like awards. And it's nice to thank people for sure. But we highlighted him and everyone's like, what? And we're like, that's a committed relationship, and those are just as important as those one-time gifts, if not more so, because that shows the accessibility of like my $1 a day, those things you see. So I can keep chatting more. We need help with systems and organizations, so I'll just throw that out there. Andrea, thank you for sharing that Google Drive. We've got a lot of that stuff. We also have a lot of that stuff ourselves, so we'll share whatever you need. So that's us in a nutshell. Thanks all.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, if you want to throw any of the videos that you're talking about into chat, that would be fun to view. Anyone else here, not to put anyone on the spot, but that might be new, that just wants to share where you're at and what you're thinking about, what brings you here? Doesn't necessarily have to be talking about a resource, but to echo what Patrick's saying, like learning how to talk to each other again. I know it's been a little while since the pandemic has officially ended, but we're all just kind of still stumbling along and relearning that, I think. Trevin, hi.
Yeah, this is my first time finding out about the Care Farming Network. I found out about it through I don't know if anyone's familiar with Eden Streets, but I've been working with them as of recently, and they're an organization kind of doing very similar stuff to Care Farming Network. They're super new. But yeah, my interest is super new to farming. I'm not necessarily looking to open up my own farm right now, but I'm kind of just preparing myself for that in the future. I did my college thesis on the benefits of farm therapy with an organization in Santa Cruz, California, that's a homeless garden farm. So they employ homeless people, find them housing. And so I did my research on that. And I don't know if that's actually, it's called Homeless Garden Project, and I can link it in the chat if anyone's interested in that. I didn't actually see it on the Care Farming Network, but yeah, it's super new for me. Right now I'm just looking to visit as many different care farms as I can and gain farming experience in hopes for later on in life eventually looking to open up my own farm or plug into a farm I'm really passionate about. So yeah, I definitely agree with like farming was my way to like exit out of COVID, even though it was like farming was the core of it. It was like really the way to connect with people outside, because in places where we had a social distance more so indoors, farming allowed me to like work with people side by side and like yeah, get used to talking to people again and working with people. And yeah, the brunt of my research was actually not on the psychological benefits, it was on the social benefits. So how farming really sped up and amplified social connection was kind of the core of what I did. And if you look up Eden Street's website, I have my full paper there and some resources there. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Trevin. Well, welcome. I just threw also in the chat that there's a California connection. I'm not sure if you are aware of Dr. Rebecca Calisi Rodriguez, who runs the Green Care Lab there in Davis, also doing a lot of research on care farming, and has sort of opened up her own care farm there, doing research with students and whatnot. But she was a guest on one of our member gatherings. I want to say maybe that was December or January of this year. Really neat woman and loves having visitors. So, and very, very inspiring.
Kate, I was going to introduce myself. I know I shared a little earlier, but it's my first time attending one of the Zooms too. This is great. I'm really excited about this. My name is Sean Hayden. I work for a nonprofit in Gardner, Massachusetts called Gamma. And one of our programs is our 115-acre farm. And it's really acts as more of a campus. We have two different programs on that site. We have a 16-bed residential program for adult meds, specifically for men with co-occurring substance use and mental health challenges. And we also have an outpatient program on that campus for young people ages 12 to 24. Similarly, struggling with substance use and or mental health. We're a little unique in that we're actually, you know, we're operating that residential program through Medicaid dollars. And our youth outpatient program is fully funded by our Department of Public Health in Massachusetts. We're a pilot program. We were able to kind of sell this idea to the state that we felt like if you gave us enough time, we could show that this should be an insurance reimbursable service and that it would be cost effective over the long haul. And we are a year and a half into our 9-year pilot. And the data is off the charts. You know, traditional data for outpatient for young people for mental health is that they attend an average of about 2 visits in the United States. And if you know anything about therapy, 1 visit is not therapy, right? It's paperwork. And the next one, maybe you get, you know, you start getting some work done. When the state funded us, they set the threshold. They said if we could get young people to attend 12 visits, they would see that as a huge success. A year and a half in, we average 18. Right now, it's a 24-week curriculum. So that includes the people who came once and said, wait a minute, I don't want to be on a farm. You know, it's freezing out here, it's hot out here, whatever it may be. And there's been a handful of those. But it's, you know, when we started this idea a few years back, we did exactly what you suggested. We found every care farm we could. We visited them all. We couldn't find any others that were really tailored specifically towards substance use. We found primarily some that were kind of psych focused that said they did recovery work, but it really just meant they put guys in a van on a Wednesday night, went to a meeting. They weren't really specializing in that. And so we, you know, we had to go it alone a little bit. We took all those great like core principles from those programs and integrated into what we were doing. And you know, to some of what some of the other people shared, I mean, I'm a person in long-term recovery myself, and what I see happen at the farm, the other piece of what we do is we operate a livestock rescue sanctuary. So we don't do commercial animal work in any way. We rescue injured, abandoned, abused, neglected livestock animals. We got about 75 animals on the farm now. We also have one small group of animals. They're Newfoundland ponies, which are critically endangered. There's only about 500 left in the world. There's about 50 in the United States, and we have 11 of them at our farm. So we're part of a breeding project to save that breed from extinction. But you know, I watch, and I had this experience myself when I was still using. Everywhere I went, I had this experience where I felt like my addiction walked through the door before I did, right? So I had this reputation everywhere I went, and I had earned it through my behavior, but it was like everywhere I went, it wasn't, hi, meet Sean. It's like, hey, here's Sean, the drug addict, or whatever people would refer to me as. And I'll bring a new guy to the farm, and we'll walk in the barn, and oftentimes they'll meet these animals who have no care about what this person's history is. They don't care that they just got out of jail or they stole from their mother or whatever. It's like, it seems like it's the first genuine relationship these guys have formed in so long. It wasn't filtered through that lens of what their previous behavior was. And I can't tell you how healing that is for these guys. It's really remarkable the transitions that take place, and where we deviate from traditional treatment. I mean, there's a million ways we deviate, but I had this experience because I can't tell you how many rehab programs I went through before I got into recovery. They all do the same thing. They welcome you, they're very nice, and they say, Sean, we need to teach you how to love yourself. And at that moment when I'm entering rehab, I'm like, dude, I just stole my grandmother's toaster and sold it for crack. You know what I mean? I'm not very lovable. And we don't do that. We'll say, hey, welcome, Sean. Worry about the love yourself later. I need you to love this baby goat. And for a person in that situation, that's doable, right? I mean, the goat's adorable. I mean, it needs my help, it needs my care. And then, you know, we'll ask an individual that under all conditions, whether it's snowing sideways in January because it's Massachusetts, or it's 110 and muggy in August, you're committed to helping that animal and raise that animal. And they learn so much from that. They learn resiliency, which is such an important tool in recovery. You know, you can't teach resiliency on a worksheet or in a didactic classroom. You have to feel resiliency to really know you've embodied it. And there's just so many ways a farm can teach that without having to, you know, ask someone to sit through a classroom lesson on that sort of thing. And it's, you know, we run multiple programs. The farm's kind of my baby. I'm there every chance I get. And, you know, I'm so happy to see other people, because when you first start this, I'm sure a lot of us have this feeling of like, am I the only one doing this? Like, what the hell am I doing? And I made every mistake. I'm sure I'll make 1,000 more. But having people in a network like this is so crucial. And Kate, it was great to meet you a couple of weeks ago on our Zoom. And I'm just excited to be part of this group. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I love it. Love this goat. Is that a t-shirt? Yeah, that you get when you enter. Yeah. Goats can be hard though, too. Stubborn, yeah.
They're on a constant mission to escape, just to stand on the other side of the fence and try to get back in. That's life with a goat.
Exactly. Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. We have just a couple minutes left. Every one of these monthly member gatherings, whether they're a little bit more formal or informal, I just walk away feeling like this network of people doing really incredibly good work, and the way that we're all connecting with each other. It's just personally really inspiring for me to listen to you all and share your stories. So thank you. Did anyone, let's see, Brianna, did you have another question?
Yeah,
Brianna.
I was just
Yeah.
I was gonna introduce myself.
I love that. Yes.
Cool. I'm Brianna, and right now I'm based in Boulder, Colorado. I formerly was in Austin, Texas, so that's how I know a little bit about the grant funding there. I was working for a nonprofit focused on bike-based education, and then we partnered with a local farm and youth education nonprofit there to help deliver some of the farm's produce to the local area. So yeah, currently I'm studying to become a therapist and integrate farming, regenerative practices, nature, and movement into the therapy process. And so I just learned that this care farming existed, and I'm so excited about it. And looking to connect and plug in with organizations and farms that are already doing this work, and then be able to like offer therapeutic services once I'm fully licensed. So just starting to like network and get to know what's out there. And yeah, so grateful that you all have put together this map and network, because it makes it all the more easier to connect in that way.
Well, welcome, Brianna. And Sean noted that the Human Animal Interaction Conference is at the University of Denver next year. Yeah. One other thing too, on our website, if you haven't checked it out, you can filter on the Care Farm map. And you can actually look under the tag of program licensed therapists, and that would filter the farms that are doing work that might be kind of similar to what it is I'm understanding you might be interested in doing too, to kind of see where folks are at. So. All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, these gatherings take place the first Thursday of every month. Not sure what November's topic is, but stay tuned. We'll be sending out invites soon. And thank you everybody for joining us. Great to see your faces. Thanks for sharing your stories, and we will see you soon.
Thank you all.